Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in on a lazy Saturday or whenever you watch this. This is when I'm recording this. And I thought, let's talk about Combat Commander Europe. Not a playthrough, but like revisiting. I was looking, this just happens to be the second printing from 2008. So this second printing, so I guess I don't know when the first printing was, but this box right here is maybe 10 years old. This is a decade, and this is still an immensely popular game. So let's talk about it. So let's open the box. Now, this was, oh, I don't want to say it's my first war game. I think I picked up Panzer 2nd edition before I did this one. And actually, I think on my wish list of games I had Pacific Commander, well, like Combat Commander Pacific and Combat Commander Europe. My wife got for me for my birthday Combat Commander Pacific, and thoroughly enjoyed that one, and I eventually got this one. And I think if you go back on my channel years, you'll see I did some Combat Commander stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed it. I did an experiment on one of my videos where I had, at the time, terrible laptop. I was hoping it would be better than it was, but it was a terrible laptop. Anyway, the camera from the laptop filmed like the entire table where you played, and then I had attached, I think, two additional cameras, and like one camera was like almost overhead on the board. I think, maybe it was just the two cameras, so you could see like a side action of me playing, me and my wife play, and then an overhead. Problem is, I don't think the laptop was good enough to really kind of handle that, and yeah, it just wasn't a good experiment. If I had better equipment, I think it would have been a really cool thing. But yeah, if you go back, this is a really good game that I've covered before. So why am I dragging this out now? Well, I go on Board Game Geek sometimes, and even on Facebook, and this particular game, people still talk about this quite a bit. And one of the things people ask is, can you play this game solo? And I thought that's what I would talk about. So let's take a look at this, reminisce on some of the components and things like that, and talk about it. The other thing, too, this is coming up again because the World War I version, Combat Commander, the Great War, I think that's what they're calling it, or Great War Commander, I think it's Great War Commander, just came out, and it has tanks. The basic game of Combat Commander was an infantry focus, and I think I think one of the battle packs has tanks. I don't remember now because I don't have all the battle packs. And then there's a couple scenarios that have special rules simulating the presence of a tank. But traditionally, like the base game did not come with vehicles because the ground scale and whatnot was for infantry. But Great War Commander, because that's the early day of tanks, and those tanks aren't super overpowerful, most of their weaponry was pretty much just machine guns covered in some armor so you can move them forward. And so their weaponry doesn't overpower everything. So it kind of I think it kind of made sense to put tanks in Great War Commander. But that's a thing of this game. All right, so anyway, let's just kind of take a look at some components. So here's the rule book. I want to say this is like a typical GMT. I haven't seen a whole lot lately, but this was 3 columns. Actually, I think this was better even than what I had Panzer, which came out a little bit later. I love the layout of this. It was easy to read. What I like is the fact that it makes it feel like there's a lot of rules, and there is some depth, but actually the rules are only, let's see, 15, 17, well, grand total of, well, I guess they totally end all the way here to page 23 and an index. Yeah, so about 23 pages of rules. And the thing is, some of the beginning parts of the rules are just explaining the components, and like how to do victory conditions and sudden death and stuff like that, like some general rules. And then once you get into the heart of the book is explaining all of the orders and different options that come on the cards. And we'll take a look at the cards here in a moment. So it's not an overly complicated game to learn. Plus, there's great examples. And being second printing, it had in here boxes like in text, blue text, if there was a change or clarification. So it's really good. Plus, the rules are on the GMT website. So if you had, say, the first edition, you got to see all of the updates. Then you had a playbook. Now, the playbook had scenarios, which is great. The scenarios aren't, overly complicated. There's quite a few, and they range from Germans, Americans, and Germans and Russians. So you have a mixture of West Front, East Front. So that was nice. And they're good. They're a nice color. Very clear what units you bring to the fight. The rules for setup, which map to use. And it looks like most of these all use one map. So we'll just go through that. And then what's cool is you had some player insights. Well, not player insights, but designer insights. And then there was a nice, I think this one had a good example of play. This is the example of play here. One of these, I think it started here. Yeah, I mean, it's like it is when they say an example of play, it starts on page 17 of the playbook, and it shows everything laid out. Oh, you can't even see off camera, but it shows everything laid out. So this game is not difficult to pick up and learn. Plus, it comes with a scenario design system built into it. So if you want to make an unlimited amount of scenarios, you can. So that's a fantastic thing right there. Now, I had another thought here and it kind of left, but anyway, I think this was a fantastic deal. Oh, yeah, the rules. Well, one of the rules it says is don't read into the rules, take the rules literally on the cards. So if the card says, weapons with machine guns can do this, well, take that literally to mean like units with machine guns. Not every unit has an attached machine gun or whatever. So a lot of times people will try to maybe overread a rule. And so if you go to, like, say, Board Game Geek and look on the forums, you'll see people asking for lots of rules clarifications. But I would say there's very little that actually is official errata for the game. The rule system is written very, very tight. And so if you actually follow that advice of read the card literally and don't try to interpret or expand what the card says, you'll do pretty good. So this game, most anybody could probably figure out and play this just with what's in the box. All right, what's in the box? So I've got counter trays. I put objectives here in a separate bag because some of these you will randomly pick objectives. So I left this in a random bagger thing. And then I've got some smoke that I have here in a bag for random draw as well. Then here's just some assorted amount of administrative counters. OB, who knows what some of this stuff is. It's been a while, but some of this is just to mark on your play aids, like the tracking the year, sudden death, control markers. So just some admin stuff. Nothing really exciting. Then I have, now these are GMT counter trays. I got these from GMT. So I use one counter tray for the admin markers, one counter tray for all of the Russian elements that come in the base game. And I did, oh my goodness. Okay, wow, look at this. I don't even know how I just noticed this. I clipped all of these counters before I had a really cool clipping tool. And I took a CD cover, like for, a music CD cover, and I kind of shaved aside one corner, and then you would put the counter into that jig and take toenail clippers and cut the corners. And so I did. And the corners, I mean, they're okay. They're cut. You know, they're not the best, not uniform, because I used a jig. But I just saw this. Out of the hundreds of counters that come in the game, look, I found one corner that's blurry to you. I didn't cut a corner. Are you kidding me? Yeah, one corner I didn't trim. So, with today's technology, let's fix that. So when did I get this? Probably 2014, maybe. So maybe a 4-year-old, well, much older counter, but I've had the game about 4 years, that this counter has been waiting for a haircut. And just like that, oh, it doesn't even fit in there very good. There we go, there we go. There. Wow, Lieutenant Kilzowski, you now have a completely trimmed. And you can see, not very well the way I'm holding it. Yeah, I'm trying to get this on the camera. So you can see one side has the professional trimmer, which is a nice round corner, and the other side was my cheesy toenail clipper. So one, you could debate, why do you trim the counters? But why do you use a fancy jig? Because the fancy cutter gives a uniform, nice round corner. Wow, I just found that. Cool. Well, anyway, there's Russians. Yay. German. So this is nice. This game gives you a nice selection of troops. So you got Russians with their assorted attached weaponry. You got Germans with their assorted attached weaponry. And you get Americans with their assorted amount of troops. Alright. What else is in the box? Well, you get the initiative card. This is the good old-fashioned, if you re-roll dice, you hand it to the opponent, and then if the game ends with a sudden death and there's a tie, player with the initiative wins the game. So, very valuable card. Here is the game track, single-sided. This reminds me of anybody who's played a lot of computer games back in the early days of computer gaming, and you had like a flight simulator. They'd give you like a keyboard overlay. You could stick this on a standard keyboard, and it would tell you all the keys would line up with the outside of the keyboard. Anyway, this kind of reminds me of one of those old flight simulator keyboard overlays. But this is where you keep track of troop quality, if they're elite units, line troops, green troops, the year. All that's just for tracking, you know, kind of administrative information for the game. Time track, automatic game end at 13, so how many turns. Victory point track, casualty track, weapons that are lost, and things of that nature, and then some notes down here. So pretty simple little tracker. Lots simpler than, say, fighting formations, that's for sure. Then you had, actually you got two of the same double-sided player aids. So an explanation of what the stats are, how many cards you can discard, because every country can discard a certain amount of cards. So Americans on their turn could discard up to 5, Germans up to 6. Because that's just saying what their available supply, their ability to supply. For some reason, Germany, depending on when you play, you would think Germany would get a lot fewer cards to discard. Where's the thing at? But anyway. Oh, and then double, so the other side is your terrain. Alright. Then, what's really cool are your 3 unit cards for creating solo adventures. Not Han Solo, but I guess they're not solo. I said solo adventures because we're going to talk about playing solo. But anyway, these are your random scenario generator charts for determining what units. And this is an amazingly good system. I've played a couple scenarios and they're great. You kind of pick the size of game you want, and it actually creates 2 fairly balanced armies that make sense, and it's pretty amazing. It's really hard to describe how good this system works to make a scenario unless somebody walks you through the process of making a scenario. Which, now that I've said that, sounds like that's going to be another video, how to make a scenario. So we'll do that another time. Then you have a bunch of maps. I say bunch, but you know, that's relative. These are double-sided. So I've got one. And what's cool too, see, another thing too is these maps aren't overly huge, but they're big enough that you feel like you've got play space. So it's almost like taking several of those lock and load maps, like 3 or 4 lock and load maps, and then here's your play area. Plus, the hexes are, I think they were like 1.5 inches, a little bit bigger than an inch. Excuse me, not quite 2 inches, but big enough that you can actually fit. Let me show you. These are maybe half inch counters for the troops and like 5/8 for equipment. But where's the camera? Yeah, without zooming in, you can actually fit quite a few troops in here. And that's one rule I always hated, was their overstack rule. I like some of the rules for Pacific I cheat and use here in Europe because it makes sense. Like they had a rule, and I believe, if I remember, in Pacific, if you overstacked a hex, you lose like some defense points equal to the amount of troops that are overstacking the limit. Whereas here, if you overstack in Europe, you actually have to take casualties until you're overstacking the hex comes down to the amount of troops you're supposed to have. That never made sense to me. I played it that way, but after you play Pacific I think does a couple of rules so much better. I think it does rally better and it does overstacking better. So when I play, the rally cards are a little bit different in the Europe. So I play rally how it should be, although I like the rally system in Pacific better. But I play overstacking the way you do in Pacific. So instead of taking automatic casualties, your overstack hex is just easier to kill stuff. All right, that's how I play it, because that made more sense to me. Anyway, so the maps are great. They're double-sided. What do we say? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So actually that's 12 maps. They're not geomorphic. They're self-contained for the scenario, and they cover Western and Eastern Front. So you get an amazing amount of maps. Plus, you couple that with your scenario generator, and you have an unlimited amount, really an unlimited amount of scenarios that you can play on Eastern and Western Front with a variety of terrain. So this by itself is a fantastic buy on the box. But how do you play solo? All right, that's what we're talking about today. How do you play the game solo? So one, you already know you got a great game. So it boils down to card management, okay? I got one box for the Russians. I think my Americans are in here, and my Germans. Now, I sleeve these, and I tell you what, my American deck of cards seems a lot smaller than the Russian deck and the German deck. I think the American deck has fewer cards. They should have all had an equal amount. I must have lost some cards. I feel bad, but I don't know. I'd have to look. I've actually got a index of cards, so I'll have to check and see. It just feels like there's slightly fewer cards in the American deck. I don't know. Maybe that makes them more efficient or something. Who knows? Anyway, the way to playing your game solo really comes down to card management. Now, I have these sleeved. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm thinking of re-sleeving these cards from what I have here. These are standard. Some of these are. Okay, I've actually got 2 types of cards I've got these sleeved in. Here, I have an example of a card that's sleeved in cheap Walmart penny sleeves. So it's really thin. Oh, you know what? That's what it is. I just figured out why these decks are different. These penny sleeves are really thin, flimsy plastic, and they're much bigger than the card. So the card has a lot of play and give in it, and how it sits in the sleeve. Then I have some Upper Deck Pro. These are thicker So that right there is why the German and American decks have a different thickness, is because these sleeves are much more sturdy. But the thing is, these are kind of glossy, and so your deck, it's very easy to knock cards over, and that happens sometimes. You're trying to play, try not to knock this up, but you're trying to play, and boom, oops, I'm knocking my cards over. So I've actually got some Dragon Shield cards that are, they're probably about this thickness. So the German deck, all these decks will be big and thick. But one side, instead of both sides being smooth, the card side that you read the information is smooth, but then the back is kind of rough. That way when you have a big stack of cards like this, they're not easy to, mess about. So I might re-sleeve all of these into the Dragon Matte Clear cards. Alright, anyhow, here's how you play solo. First of all, your game is going to tell you how many cards a person would get when you play double. Alright, so let's say I'm the Americans, and it says Americans get 4 cards. I'm just going to pick out 4. Here's 4. I'll put them here. Then the German player, let's say you get 4 cards. Well, here's the thing. There's no, that I've seen, there's no solo bot for this game, right? There's no solo AI. I could be wrong. It's actually not something I've really looked for. I'm sure if you went to Board Game Geek, somebody probably has created a solo AI. When I play this game, I just play both sides. And this is the part where some people will tell you that this is completely a solo game or not. It depends on the solo experience that you're looking for. If you're looking for a system that has an AI, you might look around and, like I said, hit Board Game Geek, and maybe someone has created an AI that tells you how you should play the cards. Traditionally, you would manage both hands. Now, I've heard some people say this. Here's some examples of things I've heard. Let's say the Germans have finished their turn. So you're going to put your German cards upside down. That way you don't remember what they have. And then you play the American player, and you're now going to look at your hand. And I have a fire, I've got move, here's another fire, move. Great. I can move troops all day. I've got a lot of move action. So I'm going to play a fire on this group of people. Okay, good, they're done. All right. Oh, maybe I'll play move over here, so we'll activate those groups. I'm done. So what I do, I then turn my cards over. So I don't remember, unless you have a really good memory. I don't. So you put this down, and the idea is that you kind of forget what's in the opponent's hand. Like, you don't remember how many moves or fires or different kinds of cards they have, because that's that fog of war. You don't know what your opponent has, right? So the idea is you kind of forget what's in the other hand. Then I swap the board around on my lazy Susan, or sit in the other chair and look back at the other side of the board, whatever, and I pick up my German cards and I go, oh yeah, okay, I got 2 moves, I got a command confusion, let me play a move I'll discard for the German, and that's it. That's all we're going to do. I'm going to do that for now. So I'm done. Then I come back to the American side, and I'm like, oh shoot, I could have played a fire. So this is kind of the drawback to the idea of putting it down. If you remembered that the American player had a fire card, then that's when you could do maybe an op fire. But it requires you to remember all the cards that you have. And then, because I'm the American player, I got to draw my 2 cards, right? And then I'm back to a full hand, and I might say, oh, I'm going to play a route card on the enemy and put this down. All right. Then I pick up the Germans. He draws back up to his full hand or whatever it is. And then he says, I'm going to play a move. So the German player says, I'm playing a move. And then you, because you're running both hands of cards, you go, aha, I've got a fire card. Yes, I do. I had a fire card. So I'm going to do an opportunity fire. So, yeah, is the game soloable? It is, but you either can leave all the cards up. It doesn't matter what you do. But the thing is, this is the problem I have with a lot of games that don't have a solo bot. And I'm not saying you're incapable of playing the game. It's challenging because you know what both people have to some degree. That's why some people say play with the hand down and you kind of forget. And you might forget that there's a fire card. Because when you, trust me, we play face to face, your opponent might have a fire card, but the game has this such a great sense of anything can happen. It's so chaos driven. Upside down. Your player might just hold on to fire cards and never opportunity fire. It's hard to say. So yeah, it's a solo game and you can manage it a couple different ways. So either A, keep all the cards down, or keep them face up, and then you have to manage both sides and just say, yeah, I think I would opportunity fire. Let me go ahead and do that. Now, there is, like I said, some options out there. You could set aside some rules like, well, I'm only going to play opportunity fire if the enemy moves like 2 hexes. I take that from the solo game of 65. In 65, you move 2 hexes, and then you have to check. You draw an AI card, and it says if they opportunity fire or not. I mean, so you can make all kinds of little rules for yourself like that too. But again, that's all managed by the player. I guess maybe this video is a lot longer than answering the simple question is, can you play the solo or not? So let's summarize. Yes, the game is solo playable, but you have to manage both hands of cards, and then you can either play them face up, face down. Now, I think there was, and I don't know if this would work, there was a Bazooka Joe. Stuka Joe came up with like a solo system for card games. And to be quite honest, if you go like to YouTube and do a search for Stuka Joe, and you'll get his channel. And then if you look on his channel, you should see that there's he has like a rules for a solo card game. And I don't know if it was for a particular game specifically or something that you could play with like any card game. But it had a system where like if you picked this card, I think you rolled a die or something, and you would count over to where it landed, and it would say, okay, I'm going to play the Command Confusion card, which isn't really something you play. It's a dead card, one you would want to discard. So what you would do then is like shift over these cards and then draw back up to how many cards you have. And this is like to run your solo opponent. But that way, there's more to it than that. Okay, that's a poor explanation of his system. He actually has a pretty elegant system. It seems a little complicated, which is why I never got into it. But for whatever game he set it up for, I thought it was supposed to be for any card game. But anyway, that kind of gives you some randomness to what your opponent would do. Are they moving? Are they shooting? But like this here, since it's a Command Confusion, you can't do anything with that. Your decks have these dummy cards that are worthless, so I might save that for either using as a discard. So if the AI drew Command Confusion, then I would just say, oh, my enemy AI this turn is discarding some crap cards. And since they're the Germans, they can discard up to 6. Well, here's one. I'm going to go ahead and clear out this artillery request card. They don't have artillery, so we'll get rid of artillery. And there you go. I just spent the turn for the German player, and I've replenished their cards. So that's like a solo system I've seen there. Not quite a bot, not quite a way that says specifically how they'll play. You still got to make some decisions. But now that I've said that, I'm going to pause the video right here. I'm going to hit Board Game Geek, and I'm going to see if there's a solo AI. I'm going to do the homework for you, so I'll be right back. Okay, I just got back from Board Game Geek looking for some solo systems. And there are some solo systems in the files, and I looked at a couple of them, but I didn't see one that specifically was a bot that would say, here's what you do. In fact, they were more like suggestions, things you would do. And the one I looked at that was like the number 2 rated file, it even had what I just said. You're going to play with that imperfect knowledge of keeping the hands down when it's not your turn to play. And then it says, for opportunity fire, it says, if you're moving, just ask yourself, would I fire? Like if I was playing this person in real life, would I do opportunity fire? And if the answer is yes, then you look at the hand of cards and you see if there's an opportunity, if there's a card that would let you fire. Like, oh, okay, I got one, so let me do opportunity fire. So again, it's more of like a guideline of suggestions. So ultimately, I think I'll wrap up here because this is a question like for any game. Can you play it solo? Will it solo? That might be the name of a series that I do. Combat Commander Europe, Combat Commander Pacific. Will it solo? Yes. But it's not an easy game to solo. There's not a bot that I've seen. Maybe there is. Maybe I got to dig deeper to Board Game Geek. But it still requires you, the player, to make a lot of decisions and assumptions and asking yourself questions. Would I do this? Would I do this? So you're technically playing both sides. And the only thing I've seen that's common in a lot of these is the hidden card mechanic. And then you don't look and see what the enemy has until you switch sides and play your opponent. All right? So will it solo? Yes. Complexity. Well, now let's come up with a rating system. You all are a lot smarter than me. Let's keep it simple. So scale of 1 to 5. 1, not very solo friendly. And you say, but look, they already got a solo scale. Well, they do. Look. Solitaire suitability. Low. They already decided that for us. So yeah, can you solo? You can, but it's low. So they gave it a 3 out of 10. So if I was going to make my own scale, I'll do the same thing. I'll go 1 through 9. And they got it broken into 3 categories. A 1, 2, 3 for low, 4, 5, 6 medium, 7, 8, 9 for high. I agree. This is probably in the 3 category. Oh, well, I tell you what, let's just do 1, 2, 3. If I make a scale, 1, 2, 3, low suitability, medium suitability, high suitability. Because I think it's kind of weird to give it granularity within the low. We'll just say low or high. Yes, this is a solo game, but it's low. It's low. All right, yeah, so share your thoughts. Just curious to see what other people think. And you tell me. Is Combat Commander solo friendly? Although I am curious to see if Great War Commander is solo friendly, because it looks like the exact same system, just different cards for World War I. Yeah, so let's open that discussion. And I'll look for some other games that I have that we've looked at before, and we'll ask the question, will it solo? All right, cool. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad you got to see some components of the game. And truly the heart that drives the solo ability is the card aspect. All right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot. Bye.